You know how it goes. A song, a meme, some new TV show, it goes viral. And for a minute, it really does feel like the whole world is in on the joke, right? Like we're all watching and listening to the exact same thing at the exact same time. But is that what's really happening? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that idea.
Okay, so let's just ask it straight up. Is this whole idea that we're all part of one big global conversation a bit of a lie? It kind of assumes everyone has a front row seat to the show, but what if most of the world can't even get in the door?
And that's really what we're digging into today, the global culture myth. We're going to look at the huge, and I mean huge, gap between the idea of a shared global culture and the reality, which is, well, a world full of very real barriers that keep a lot of people out.
So here's the bottom line. Your ability to see the latest TikTok trend or binge watch that hit series, that's not a given. It completely depends on having money and technology that, let's be honest, a massive part of the world's population just doesn't have access to.
So let's break down exactly how these barriers get built. And we're going to start with the biggest and most obvious one of all, money. Because before you can even care about what's trending, you have to be able to afford the ticket.
That's really the heart of it. Popular culture isn't just floating in the air for us to grab. Nope. It's a product. It's packaged and it's sold for a profit, which immediately puts a price tag on whether or not you get to participate.
And that price tag comes in a lot of different forms. First, you've got the hardware, right? You need a smartphone or a TV or a computer. Then you've got the bills that never stop, internet service, and in many places, even just reliable electricity. And we haven't even touched on things like concert tickets or the latest fashion. For millions of people, these aren't small hurdles, they're giant walls.
Okay, but let's just say you do have the money. Well, surprise, that's still not enough. The next barrier isn't about what's in your wallet, it's about what's in the ground. We're talking about the infrastructure gap, a massive digital divide that separates the connected from the disconnected.
It's really as simple as that. The whole idea of pop culture spreading like wildfire depends on a physical network of cables and cell towers and satellites. If that network doesn't reach where you live, you're just cut off. You're outside the conversation, no matter how much you want to be in it.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Let's ask, where does all this global culture even come from? Well, this chart says it all, doesn't it? The vast, vast majority of the pop culture we consume is created in just a few wealthy countries, the US, the UK, Japan. They're not just part of the conversation, they're basically running it.
And these gaps in the grid are no joke. We're talking about huge parts of the world, especially rural areas that don't have consistent electricity, let alone high-speed internet. It literally creates two different worlds, the instant access you get in a city versus the digital silence you might find just a few hundred miles away.
So up to now, we've looked at barriers that are mostly about money and logistics. But sometimes the walls that keep culture out are built on purpose. This brings us to the censorship wall, where governments deliberately decide what their citizens can and cannot see.
And this quote right here, it just nails the motivation. Some governments actively limit access to protect local folk values or maintain political control. See, for some governments, the free flow of ideas from around the world doesn't look like connection. It looks like a threat to their traditions, and maybe more importantly, a threat to their power.
And they've got a whole toolbox to make it happen. They can ban certain apps outright, they can block websites that have anything to do with politics or social issues, but the goal is always the same: control the narrative and suppress any outside influence.
So, with all these barriers chopping up pop culture, what's the alternative? Well, this slide paints a really clear picture of two totally different worlds. On one side, you have pop culture. It's electronic, it's super fast, and it wants to be global. On the other side, you have folk culture, which plays by a completely different set of rules.
So let's jump over to that other side of the divide. Folk culture isn't defined by how many people it reaches, but usually by its isolation. It's the kind of culture that's deeply connected to a specific place and a specific group of people, and it exists way outside that going viral loop. It's not for everyone, it's for someone in some specific place.
So how does this type of culture travel? Not through the internet, but through something much, much older. Relocation diffusion. And it's such a cool idea. It means culture spreads slowly, at a human pace. It only moves when people physically get up and move, carrying their traditions with them, like seeds to a new garden. That's relocation diffusion.
And this is what's so amazing about folk culture. It's often preserved because it's isolated. Physical barriers, like a huge mountain range, can literally act like a shield, protecting unique traditions for centuries. It thrives not by being open to everyone, but by being kept close within a community. It's just not designed for outsiders.
All right, we have covered a ton of ground here, from the price of an iPhone to the power of a mountain. So let's try to pull this all together. What does all this mean for that idea of a single global culture?
When you boil it all down, what we really see are four massive barriers that just shatter the illusion of one global culture. You've got the economic barrier, the simple cost of entry, the technological barrier, that gap in infrastructure, the political barrier, the censorship wall, and finally the geographical barrier, the physical isolation that keeps folk traditions alive and separate.
And so, that leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on. In a world this unequal, where what you see and hear is determined by your money, your government, and your location, can a truly global culture even exist? Or are we all just living in our own separate cultural bubbles?